What we're going to transition into now is the side pose. I find it easy to transition into this pose from the back pose, so it's minimal movement for the baby. We're not having to pick them up and put them down, which causes them to wake up. Now it's completely natural for them to move, but it's just keeping your hands gently resting on them so that they don't get that startle reflex and wake up. Okay, so I don't need to unwrap her, but what I do want to do as I turn her onto her side is make sure that that wrap comes out underneath her so that she's not lying on it. So I'm just going to loosen it off a little. Okay, so bringing the wrap down as far as I can between her and the posing bag. As I turn her, it's going to come out the back. Always want to start with a nice flat surface, and our light source is on the right, so I'm going to turn her towards that light source. Keeping nice flat hands on the shoulders and legs so that she's nice and secure as I turn her. Just push that down a bit. She's going to have a stretch at the same time. Beautiful. So keep that wrap around her. And I'm just going to bring her face towards that light. So I've got my fingers in nice and flat underneath the back of her neck on the side of her head. Just guide her around a little bit more. And let her relax back into that sleep. So while she's just sinking back into that sleep there, I'll peg my backdrop up, allowing them to drift off, puts them back into that nice deep sleep. So I want my backdrop to be nice and low, because if it's too high it's going to look like a wall behind her, and I want the background to sort of drift off into the distance. So I've got it pegged quite low, and then I'm going to pull my bag out to give that nice stretch. There we go. I'll use a different coloured wrap. And just a little headband to go with it. So with this pose, I want to aim to get the hands up nice and high underneath that cheek to lift her face up off the beanbag, and then I want to tuck the legs up towards her bottom so we've got a nice straight line. Having their hips turned a little bit over towards that bag will keep that top leg weighing down on the bottom one. This heater, wrap up a little bit in the heater. So as I pull this one away, I'm going to place this one over the top. It's now nice and warm, and I'm going to tuck it in at the front. Any change that I make or adjustment, I always make sure that I've got a little bit of weight with my hand just on the arm and the leg so that they feel nice and secure. So I want to make sure that there's nothing covering her face or sticking out in front of her face so that it's distracting in the image. Tuck that in and then pull it across her body. Use that as a bit of a feature out the back, but I want to make sure that when I'm taking the shot it's not a distraction behind her head, so it just needs to be nice and subtle and drift off into that background. Okay. So with this hand here on the bottom, I want to bring it up underneath the cheek, and the top hand, I want to bring the thumb and link it over the top of the wrist, and then when I bring those fingers in and I lift the head, her chin will sit nicely on the back of her hand. So just taking the weight of her head off the bag. Just want to bring the top hand out so I can position the bottom one first. Pushing that thumb through so that it's not underneath the hand and up underneath that cheek. So I'm just checking the temperature here. I'm always going to keep an eye on it. And what I'm going to do is just turn that down a little bit. And move it away. So now with the top hand, just bringing that thumb through with your forefinger so we can place it over the top of that wrist and underneath the chin. And just as she gets comfortable, so tuck those feet back up towards her bottom. So now what I need to do is just give her head just a little bit of a lift so it's higher than her bottom. So going into the bottom of my layers, I'm going to slide this hand under, lift the weight of her head off the bag, and then position the wrap with the towel with my other hand. Now she's doing exactly what every baby does, which is just react and move. They all move. So I'm just going to get that thumb there and link it over that wrist. That allows the hand to sit nice and flat. But as she adjusts to that. She likes having these legs out. Okay, I'm just going to tie that loosely so I can just place it over the top of her head. Push it down underneath. Now headbands for me belong in the hair, and if you have a flower or something like that, it belongs off to the side. If it's in the middle of her forehead, it can be quite distracting. So I'm always looking for something that's nice and subtle. Okay, so I'm going to come up with that left hand, just lifting her head and sliding that towel in underneath. Then I can fold that towel. It doesn't matter what you use to lift the baby. There are some great stuffers. For me, I've been using towels since I started, and I find that they're nice and easy to fold and position underneath the baby's head. So what I want to do is bring her chin up towards that light so we can see all of her face. So I've got one hand with nice flat fingers at the back of her neck. I'm just going to gently rock. And as she reacts, there it is. There's her chin. A little more. Uncurl those fingers. There we go. So on average, babies sleep for about 14 hours of every 24 hours. And every 4 hours they have about 40 minutes of deep slumber. So she's sleeping, but she's not in that deep slumber because she's really reacting to my touch, which is fine. She's just being a normal baby. But we have to go slow and be patient so we can get the setup. If she was to start crying and wriggling and really sort of fight me, then I would stop and move on to the next pose. But I can feel her really starting to relax. I've kept my hands in the exact same place. I've actually managed to bring that chin up a little higher towards the light, and now I just need to help position her fingers. Bring that feet out so they drift off into the background. No, this way. So with this setup, I want to aim to get a full shot, a full body shot, and then I want to come in nice and close and get a side shot of her face. I'm going to move over this way, get my safe shot with that light, and then I'm going to come in and adjust those fingers. So when you are getting this shot, you've got to be careful that you're not blocking any of the light. I've rotated my camera so that I've got her head higher in the frame. She's in the bottom 2/3. So now I can come in and adjust those fingers. At least I've got something. She startled before. So I don't want to not get a photograph, but we'll bring those fingers out nice and straight now. I'm going to bring in another cloth nappy and give her head just a little bit more support at the back there. So I always find using my fingers on the shoulder, it's going to make her feel nice and secure. My thumb on the back of the wrist. What I want is the wrist to come in underneath that face so I can see the fingers. If the wrist is out, I'm going to lose the fingers. So keeping my thumb just there, I can curl those fingers out. What we might do is get a couple of these fingers from underneath her cheek here. Just gently taking the weight of her head off the bag. Get a little closer. Okay, I'm going to leave the hand under the cheek because she's reacting. That's fine. And just bring these fingers back up underneath the chin. Wait for her to relax. There it is. So I'm just going to cup my right hand around the top of her head, and as I gently rock, keeping her arm and hand in that position, just going to gently push her head back, bringing that chin forward so we can see it towards that light. There it is. Beautiful. And we get a little shot from above. So this is the frame right here across her face. Coming in nice and close. Beautiful. And that's our side pose.